Well, hi everybody. I'm Jay Arthur, author of Lean Six Sigma Demystified, Lean Six Sigma for Hospitals, and QI Macros. And today we're going to be talking about QI Macros for Excel and how they can help you automate Lean and Six Sigma to get more done in a more timely fashion. I will say that we have been having some network issues. It seems to be working well today, but Comcast sometimes has a way of shooting me in the foot. So if that happens, it may cut in and out. I don't think so, but I apologize for that in advance. If it does happen, it will come back at some point, and I will continue. I'll be recording this whole webinar, so you'll be able to review it again tomorrow, the next day, and the day after that, and with anybody else that you want to review it with. So let's get on into it. So I'm one of those people that don't believe you have to be a statistician to use QI macros. I think you shouldn't be, right? This is who I designed it for. Not for black belts and green belts, although they can all use it very well. But no belts, people who just need to draw a chart, monitor a process, do things like that. So we'll talk about how you can do all of that and much, much more. So the QI macros have four main parts. There's charts and wizards. And we have fill-in-the-blank templates that make it super easy to do the final phase of Six Sigma control, because then you can just keep things up to date over time. I don't know about you, I don't like having to draw charts over and over again every time I add a new data point or do whatever. So we created some fill-in-the-blank templates and dashboards to do that for you. We also have some improvement project data mining tools that'll make it super simple to build entire improvement projects. And we have the statistical tools. So Shigeo Shingo said, your business is like a banana. It's 46% waste. And, Duran always said it was 25 to 33%. So we know that there's a huge amount of waste in most businesses. And if we could unscrew that somehow, we could have all that money flow to the bottom line, which would boost profits, which would bonuses and promotions and all that other kind of stuff that you see out there, all right? So my goal is to help you get there from here. Now I'm going to start with the most powerful piece of QI macros first, because nobody else has this little gizmo. And so what it'll do is take data that looks like this by date, by production line type of defects, or by date, by nursing unit type of patient harm, the when, the where, the what of what's going wrong. It'll take all of that data and pivot it and turn it into control charts and Pareto charts and fishbone diagrams, all with a single click. And so the Improvement Project Wizard sits right up here on the menu. And if you have data like this, it'll go ahead and turn that into an improvement project. So let's show you how to do that. If I can go find my Excel, there we go. So as you can see, QI Macros adds on to Excel's menu after all your other stuff. If you come down to QI Macros Help, you'll see that we have sample data. If you click on sample data, it'll open up all kinds of things. So we have Automotive Industry Action Group, we have Healthcare Data Guide, Healthcare SPC. So we probably have people from both manufacturing and healthcare in this presentation. So I'll be attempting to show you how to use data from different kind of venues. Because you can do this with anything. If Wendy's can teach their people who make buns for them how to use control charts using QI macros, you can too. All right. So we have a data mining data set here. And as you can see here, we have by date, by line, folded flaps. Well, or bent and damaged flaps. And I can't tell you how many people come around and then they start counting how many times folded flaps occurs. And then they go on to carton while not open, and then they're using an abacus to do this. But Excel will do all of that for you using pivot tables. But all you have to do with the Improvement Project Wizard is just select two headings, and then up here below the QI Macros menu is the Improvement Project Wizard. Now the Improvement Project Wizard will take that, pivot that data, and start to look for improvement projects within that data. And, I used to spend hours and sometimes days doing this manually, so I had to automate it to make my life easier and your life easier. So it'll come up with an executive summary here. And again, all of this was done by this little guy here. And so it created a control chart of defects by date, and then it started in on projects. So it found 2 projects. And it found at first the higher level, the Pareto chart, and I call this the 80-20, the high level one. You all are familiar with the 80-20. But within the 20, there's very often a lower level, what I call a 450 rule Pareto chart. And so it'll go find those, and then it'll build the Ishikawa diagram for that. And there's the problem statement it creates. And the second project has 2 levels of Pareto charts, a fishbone diagram, and so on. So it'll come in here and just start with this. So here's our control chart of defects by date. Now this, in healthcare, this could be patient harm by date. All of these things are the same thing to me. They're just named it differently, if you will. And so then it'll drill down and it says, oh, line 3 has 53% of the total defects. And then within that, oh, folded flaps are, 39%. And then it'll take that, because we've narrowed this down from the 80-20 down to the 450 rule down into reality here. And then what we're going to do is actually come in and say, okay, what's our fishbone diagram? And it'll grab any data it can find and say, during this time frame, folded flaps accounted for 39.5% of line 3 defects. And once it's done that, guess what? It'll come out and start with looking at the data another way. So it'll look at it by type of defects. So folded flaps are the biggest piece. It'll drill down into that, and you can see here that line 3 is 79% of the total defects. And we'll come up with a fishbone diagram. Line 3 accounted for 79% of defect folded flaps. Now, here's what I have found is that a lot of people try to gather a team before they know what they're working on. But if you can do this kind of analysis and build improvement projects this quickly, and again, this data can come from purchasing systems, payment systems, invoicing systems, healthcare medical records, all of these things. In healthcare, you could dump out adverse events, medication errors. You can do all of that kind of stuff from right here. Super easy. All right, so this is what can be done. And you don't want to actually get a team together until you've narrowed the focus down to what you want to fix. Because now we know we need people from line 3 who know something about folded flaps. Guess what? You can get your leadership team to pony up a couple hours to do root cause analysis once you've done this kind of thing. All right, so that's the improvement project wizard, and it lives right up here. And we have some other data mining tools, our pivot table wizard, word count wizard, some other things up under here as well. And I think that's one of the most powerful tools in the QI macros. All right, so I also want you to notice that on your little toolbar there's a place where you can ask questions. So as I go through this, if you want to ask a question, feel free to do that, and I'll attempt to respond to those as we move along. And if I do something and you go, wait, how did you do that? Show me again. I'm fine with that, okay? I'm just fine with that. All right, so the minimum data requirements are you need the where, the when, the where, and the what. If you have more stuff about how much did it cost, who was involved, and so on, that'd be great. So if you have data that looks like this was in healthcare, by hospital, denied charges, there's the where, the when, and the what, and how much did it cost. That was worth $5 million a year to the company I work with. If you're in manufacturing, you have data that looks like this, but scrap code by scrap weight. And how much scrap did we actually have here? The when, the where, the what, the how much. That was worth $1 million a year. Every multi-million-dollar project I ever worked on started with a pivot table of this kind of data. This is why raw data is so important. Somebody just asked, what version of QI macros gives you the improvement project wizard? 2017 has the improvement project wizard, but back then it was called the data mining wizard. So you may see it as one of those two things. So it's still in the same place. So it would still be right over here, except it would say data mining wizard. People started talking to me, and they said, that it's not a data mining thing, it's an improvement project wizard. And I said, okay, fine, right? That's good. We had another question. Are we going to cover a CPK or a chi-squared in this webinar? I can absolutely do that. That's a little bit later on. So I'll be in there as we go. So one person said, I'm very impressed with the Improvement Project Wizard. Saves time. I'm going to recommend it to the American Society for Quality Leadership. So again, what we've done is covered the Improvement Project tools. So let's start to cover some of the other tools as well. Now, I believe that you don't need to know the formulas because the software knows the formulas. You don't need to know all of those things. You know, I spent 5 days in a control chart class learning all the formulas and an hour discovering what the control charts say, right? And this is the way that we can make all these good things happen, is just automate all this stuff. And the QI macros automated the Project Improvement Wizard. We also don't want you to learn decision trees, right? Because people aren't good at decision trees, so I built the Control Chart Wizard. So the idea here is we just want to select data, click on one of the wizards, and it'll choose the right chart, stat, or whatever automatically. So I'm going to close this for a second. And in the sample data, so I'm going to start with just some healthcare data here. And so if you have a column of data, this is falls per 1,000 patient days. This is a common metric in healthcare. Right below the QI macros is the control chart wizard. Now, if you're smart and you already know what chart you want to choose, you can just come in here and pick it. So the correct chart would be the XMR individuals. But if you're not, you don't know all of those rules, or you're training people who don't want to learn all those rules or all those things, then the control chart wizard will go pick the right chart for you. Single column decimal data has to be an XMR chart. And so here you can see we have a couple out of control points, a downward trend when they made some improvements probably. You can see the out of control points over here on the side. So it will draw the entire improvement chart for you. And then if you click on this, you'll notice there was QI macros menu. There's also a QI macros chart menu. Now what I found is some people didn't know how to choose or show process changes. So, you know, we had the ability to show process changes. You can fix your control limits. You could recalculate all of that stuff, ghost points, delete points, and so on. But the process change wizard will look for trends and runs and go automatically adjust your limits for you. All right? So that is a pretty easy way to show the before and after of improvement. And somebody was asking, they're using the 90-day version. What do I have to do to get this to be permanent? Buy a copy. And if you go out to our website under the Order Now button, you can actually purchase it. Somebody asked for infection rates. Does it matter what order the variables are in? For example, month, number of infections, number of cases. Yes, it does. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at, you know, potentially that might be like P-chart data. Let's see if I have some of that data in here. Somewhere. And let's see. Well, we have transfers, patients, bed sores. We have all kinds of data in here. If you want to know what your data ought to look like, for example, so in your case, this person is asking about infection rates. So this might be infection rates or infections. And then this might be patient days or something like that. And if you select all of that data, the chart will go, can there be more than one infection per patient day? Well, yes. And so it's going to go ahead and figure out, well, that ought to be a U chart, and it will calculate that for you. All right, so it's going to go calculate all that for you. And somebody missed how the process change in the chart tools was performed. Again, if you just select this chart, you notice there's some points here. You go up to the chart menu, there's a process change wizard. And the process change wizard will go figure out where process changes occurred and plot those in for you. Now, if you don't like it, you can always come back and say, I want to recalculate my limits and put it back the way it was. Everything is controlled by the chart menu for all of these control chart pieces. Now, one of the things we added in July is once you run a chart like this, it's also going to pull up the actual template, the XMR template, or the P chart or U chart templates. So we have XMR chart templates and P and U chart templates. You know, it's great that you can grab data and run a chart, but you also want to then be able to track it over time. So we want to come in next month, type in November, and maybe it was 10, and maybe we had 3,300, and so it'll just keep adding data points to your chart as you go. And again, everything still works the same way. We could analyze stability, we could run process changes on this. If you don't want to see all the extra things down here, you can filter the chart and it'll collapse it, or you can go in here and unfilter the chart and it'll put it back. So there's a lot of tools in here to help you with that. Some are in the chart menu. A lot of things are, the main pieces are on the QI macros menu itself. All right. So we bounced around a little bit, but I hope that's useful in terms of everybody. So select the data, click a macro or a wizard, and get the right chart. Now, you know, I know what chart to choose, but I use the chart wizard because I don't have to think, right? I'm against thinking. So one attendee at the National Association of Healthcare Quality, it's like a magic program. You input the data, you click a button, and poof, there it is, all done for you. It's great. I love it. What I do think is important, which is the piece they barely covered when I was taking my control chart class, is what's our goal? Well, you have two things you can do. You can reduce the variation, right? That's one of the goals in Six Sigma, is reduce variation. Yay, that'd be great, right? So then we're not having as much wiggly, and the more wiggle you have, the greater the cost there is to the association or the business or whatever. Or you can move them to the center line. You can reduce defects. You could increase patient satisfaction. Those are the things we can do that would be very powerful from a systematic performance improvement standpoint, right? That's what we want to do with common cause variation. Move the center line, reduce variation. All right, so that's kind of a key. Or you might want to reduce deviation. So we might use histograms. So once we do that, what we want to do is move things on target to bring our CP and CPK up to a 1. Or we want to reduce variation. And so somebody was asking about CP and CPK. And again, in healthcare, you might only have times, like turnaround times, for your lab results or anything like that. And what you want to do is actually reduce that variation. All right? So we want to move those things around. Now let me come back over here, and I'm going to open up some other data. So we have some automotive industry action group data. So here's some piston diameters or something from the automotive industry action group. We have an upper spec and a lower spec. And so what you want to do is, again, select your data with the mouse. Now, one of the things, this is different from everybody else, all right? Because I ask you to select your data first, that allows me to analyze it with the control chart wizard or the chart wizard or the stat wizard. It allows me to go look at what you're offering me, and I can help you choose the right thing automatically. Now, you can come over here under histograms. You could run a histogram. Or you could run a capability suite, which has histograms, control charts, and everything else in it. And so if we select that data and run a capability suite, it'll ask us for an upper spec. And then and it'll calculate all of these things, create our charts, and so on. And somebody was asking about CP and CPK, so it will calculate using these control limits, spec limits, sorry, an upper spec capability of 1.79 and a CPK of 1.74. Now, if you know anything about CP and CPK, 1.7 is about over 1.66, which is 5 sigma. A CP of 2 is considered to be 6 sigma. CP of 1.3 is about the minimum for manufacturing. And 1.0 means that things will fit between the upper and lower spec limits, but it may not be exactly what we're looking for. All right. So that's the capability suite. We could have also taken that data and run it as a histogram, right? And we actually have fill-in-the-blank templates for histograms and so on. I can't type, can I? There we go. And again, it'll create a histogram with CP and CPK. So happily that answered the CP and CPK question as well. Now in healthcare, you might only have a CPK, but you'd like it to be at least 1. All right. Now let me go back over here to our healthcare data. And let me go see if I can, there's some healthcare data. So this is time to thrombolytics for, from Davis Balistracci's book. In healthcare, you might say, and thrombolytics are a drug to break up clots causing stroke. So let's come in here. We could say histogram, and we only want to have 1 sample per thing, and our upper spec is 60 minutes. Now we have no lower spec, so we hit cancel, and it'll calculate the number of bars. And here you can see, here's our upper spec, but we have a lot of things that are outside of that. And once you get beyond 60 minutes, then you start to have brain damage from stroke. So our CP and CPK here are like 0.38. Now we could also come in here and make some improvements and hopefully show that, yes, indeed, we've made that improvement. 60 minutes, cancel that. And here you can see our CP and CPK, or CPK is up to about 1.13. So at least we've got it within that upper spec limit. So that's much better for patients, right? Patient outcomes would be better. So you can use histograms in healthcare, manufacturing, banking, aerospace, whatever the heck it is. There's no secrets out there, right? If you got data over time, we can help you do something with that data. There we go. And then there was a question about academics licenses for PhD students. Yes, there is. And if you want to reach out to our folks here, you can talk to Ryan at qimacros.com, and he'd be happy to help you with that. And so anyway, control charts. Why do you want a control chart? Well, I go to all these conferences, and invariably I see charts like this, where there's a line graph with a trend through it, and they're pretending that the trend line says there was an improvement. It does not, all right? It does not. If you put the R-squared value, which is how good does this line fit all this data, 0.30 is not very good, right? It's 30%. If you draw that as a control chart, it's pretty stable, and there was one out of control point early on. So there really wasn't any improvement. Here's another one. This is a different type of hospital-acquired infection. Here we're at R-squared is 53, so that's pretty good. But if you drew that as a control chart and ran the process change wizard, you could see that, yes, indeed, we actually made an improvement. Now, I would trust this chart, and I would not trust the chart with just a trend line through it. So if you see a trend line on a line chart with no R-squared value, just assume it's smoke and mirrors and don't do that, all right? So I'm going to encourage you, you want to start using control charts, Pareto charts, and histograms aggressively. And when you do that, it'll be so much easier to manage your company or your hospital or your whatever, all right? It's just so much easier. These charts, the line bar and pie charts, are kind of dumb. They can't tell you, they can't give you any insight. They can't pinpoint where something's going wrong and that you should take some action and do some root cause analysis. So again, we'll automatically identify all of these points in red, and I'll come back into the QI macros here for a second. If you go under QI macros control charts, you can see whatever the current rules are. The default rules are Montgomery. Duran has different rules. AIG has different rules. Westguard's another thing for labs, Western Electric rules, healthcare rules. So you can set the rules that you want, right? If you're in healthcare, you can set this and that'll comply with the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. Right? If you just want to see what's going on out there now, this is the default in here. And so I just wanted to show you that you can find out what's actually in there pretty easily. And again, these are all, everybody has a different theory on that, so pick the one that applies to you and go with it. And we've showed you how to show process changes. Ed Cowell said, you have a way of making statistics and charting user-friendly and more easily applied. So let's talk for a moment about a Pareto chart, right? So it's a sorted line graph, so it's a bar chart, and you add in a cumulative line graph. And I find this to be the super tool for pinpointing exactly what's wrong and fixing it. All right? Super easy. We had one PhD, one candidate who teaches students how to draw it by hand. And over the last 10 years, it's taken him 43 minutes to 75. And then I have him use the QI macros and do it in 20 seconds. Now, I hate to tell you this, but I think that was a waste of 43 to 75 minutes of student time, but you get the idea. Let's save you some time. So there's over 40 charts on the menu, and we have all these wizards on top. We have a control chart template, templates wizard, process change wizard. These things are all baked in here to help you. And so let's see. We did the histograms. Hopefully you understand that this will simplify your life. And we have all these fill-in-the-blank templates to make life easy. And you put in data and your charts just grow automatically. And we also have control chart dashboards. So let me show you a little bit about that. I'm going to close this one. And I'm going to go over to the... Now again, if you come into our this data and you have something that looks like this, again I'm going to do patient falls for no good reason. We have the chart wizard which will run that, and it'll actually now pull up the control chart templates, but we have a template wizard. Now if you knew what you're doing, you could go grab our fill-in-the-blank XMR 5-pack. But you could also click on the control chart templates wizard, and it'll go look it up and go find the right template for you. And then you can go ahead and start adding more data, right? So the next time it's 4.2, and the time after that it's 3.1 or something. And you can see our chart is continuing to grow. If you wanted to set your spec limits, you can do that here. So I just want you to see that this is a great way to do the control phase. Right? And you can help anybody, anywhere, anytime, learn how to do this. And of course, all of the control chart menu tools work on here as well. Now, let's come back and talk about our control chart dashboards. So many people said, well, Jay, I've got a single template, but I want to put it all together into a dashboard. So if you put together an XMR dashboard or an XBAR dashboard, we have attribute dashboards, Levi Jennings dashboards, but I'm going to just do the XMR dashboard for fun. It's a little bigger, so it takes a little longer to open up. So on here we have instructions about how to do this. I'm just going to show you real quick. So if you had a chart and you had titles here, and I'm just going to pretend this is patient satisfaction in a hospital and injury rate. Yeah, injury rate. And you can see we have numbers in here. So I can then come in and choose from amongst various different types of templates. So I have an average, a rolling, a scrolling, a median. So you can choose any one of these. And you can see down here, we have next buttons. So patient sat showed up first. I can click on this. There's injury rate. And once you got it the way you want it, you can click on Create XMR Dashboard. And it'll take all of your data from the worksheet and build you a dashboard. All right, might take it a little bit, but it'll get it done. And when it realizes it's done, it'll stop and give you your dashboard. So here's patient sat and injury rate. Now what I can do next month is come back in and type in the next month, and maybe this is 87% and this is 5.5. I can refresh my charts and it'll come back in and put all of that back onto my dashboard, so it adds that new point. Now this is a great way. Let's see. Somebody asked about clothing sales perspective. So that might just be financial data like sales. So let me see if I got some data like that for you. Hang on a second. But anyway, so this makes it super easy to keep track of all of your key process indicators as control charts. And let me tell you, if there's nothing out of control in here, then there's nothing to do unless you want to improve it. Does that make sense? Does this make sense at all? All right? You don't want to waste time chasing why these two numbers are low or that number's up, right? You don't want to waste time doing that, right? Until there's some reason that we can detect from a statistical point of view. Now, let's see if I can get back here. So here's one guy in Snohomish, Washington, who was tracking N95 gear at the beginning of the pandemic, and the number of patients and reuse and gowns and surgical things, because he wanted to know how he was doing in terms of managing the pandemic as a fire chief in the first county that ever found actually transported a COVID patient. And I did one for Colorado and Denver, Colorado, to see what our case rate was, see where it was going. It's kind of a fun thing to do. Now, Mary at Adventist Health has to update 600 control charts for 30 hospitals, and she used to spend 3 days doing it. And with QI Macros dashboards, it takes just about 3 hours to put in the new data, run the updates, and have all the charts for all the hospitals. So I want you to get some idea of the power hidden in the QI Macros control chart dashboards. And let me see if I have some, I wonder if I have some data. Let's see. I'm going to close that for a second. And which one's that one? Okay. See if you have any XMR and manufacturing, healthcare, software. This isn't quite clothing sales perspective, but here's days to pay invoices. We could have call times for a call center. We could have time data for how long it takes to close a sale. What else do we got? That's about all I got. I don't have as much financial data as we might say, but you know, we could take a look at this and say, okay, well, how many days does it take for us to pay our suppliers, or how many days does it take to collect on certain things, right? And so it would go calculate the number of days to do that. But if these were all dollars instead, you know, this could be a number of dollars, for example, right? We could make all of that dollars, right? Sales per day and thousands or whatever it is, right? And we could run that chart as well. And that would give us, again, this idea of what's going on with sales per day, per week, per month, per whatever. And out of that might come some interesting insights into, oh, gee, we sell more on certain days, and did that that sales promotion really work to boost sales, or did we just, you know, shoot ourselves in the foot because we didn't sell that much or we didn't make as much money? I mean, these things can all be done with that kind of data. Somebody asked if there's a difference between QI macros and Sigma XL. Yes, absolutely. And again, the big difference, you can go look on our website for the differences. But the idea here is that we ask you to select the data first. And so we can have things like control chart wizards, but they ask you to pick the chart first and then the data. That's a very big difference, right? Because you have to have those decision trees in your head to go pick the right chart and then pick the data to go in there. And if you don't know what that is, or you're trying to train people, and if you've ever tried to train people about how to choose the right control chart, you know that's not very easy. So Arthur, that's I would say that's the number one difference. And then we also have the improvement project wizard, which they do not have. So these are the kinds of things that I think automate and accelerate people's learning and application of Six Sigma and process improvement. All right, well, I'm going to come back to the rest of our stuff here. Keep missing. So let's talk about Fishbones. And this, Arthur, is another thing that might also be of interest to you, is we have fill-in-the-blank templates for Fishbones and value stream maps. So back over here, I'm going to see what I've got open. Not much. Okay. I'm going to close the XMR dashboard for a second. I'm pushing so much data, I don't want to get my poor computer overwhelmed. So anyway, if you come under Fishbone, you can see we have Fishbones here. We also have all kinds of improvement tools. So we have value stream mapping, and I'll just start there because we're here. And it'll pop open our, and what it does is you can say process, what our work in process is, and fill in all these items here. And create value stream. When you click on that, it'll go build you a value stream map of whatever's in your text value. And we have some manual ones. A lot of people don't know that, you know, Excel has all these nice flow charting tools in here. It has like a mini Visio, so you can build any kind of chart you want. And it'll actually let you, you know, drag things around, connect dots and buttons and so on. This is an example from an emergency room we did, spaghetti diagrams and so on. So that's an easy way to draw a value stream map in QI macros. Now let me come back. And again, under improvement tools, you see we have the fishbone diagram, cause and effect matrices, all kinds of stuff in here. But I keep them over here because I do control chart, Pareto chart, and then I come into Fishbone, then I have a countermeasures matrix and an action plan. Those are the key tools I use 95% of the time. But here's our Fishbone diagram, and again, there's instructions in here. But you put in a problem statement, and we have a big bar, and you can choose what your big bar wants to be. So if you change that to manufacturing, it'll change those bars. Your first Y, your second Y, third Y, fourth Y. And what will happen is you can stick in, I'll use a manufacturing example from the ASQ. During 2013, downtime exceeded 1,000 hours. And, well, why? Well, once you've done and gotten all your Y's in here, you can click Create Fishbone. And maybe our real problem here, right, we want to circle the root cause, which will be the last one in here, was calibration. Or we could come back in here and we want to stick in our healthcare example. Insufficient ICU mobilization of ventilated patients. And we want to correct, you know, check all of that. And maybe the problem was oversedation, which it was, right? But it'll build our entire fishbone diagram for you, and you can go from there. And we have very large ones, and if you're doing a whalebone diagram, you probably didn't focus your improvement process well enough, all right? So I'm always concerned when I see whalebone diagrams that you're not focused narrowly enough. And then we have a small manual one that I use in the Improvement Project Wizard, and there's something called a love bug diagram. So that's a way to automate Fishbones. All right, super easy. And again, it lives here under Fishbone or up here under Fishbones. And there are many other tools in here. All right, so if you want to do ocean planning, there's ocean planning. If you want to do Gauge R&R, or measurement systems analysis, that's in here. If you are in automotive and you need PPAP forms, they're in here. If you need failure modes and effects analysis, they're in here. Or if you need an A3 report, in here. AD report, that's Ford's A3 report, so they had to be different, right? In healthcare, you need a driver diagram. That's great. Now, let me show you, maybe you just don't want to go hunting around. There's a little button up here that says Find QI Macros Tools. And so if you type in something like SIPOC, if I could type, it'll say, oh, we found it. We can open that template. And it'll pop open your SIPOC template. And there's a couple of versions of SIPOC templates here. If you're looking for Gauge R&R, you can type in Gauge, and it'll say, okay, I'll open that up for you. And it'll go pop up the Gauge R&R template and bring that to the fore. And so here's the AIAG version. There's 30 per type 1 GR&R, type 3 GR&R, range method, bias, linearity, attribute worksheet, so on. Analytic attribute method. All of these things are in templates that live inside the QI macros. All right, so that's a great way to find anything, because otherwise, it might be hidden. So that's a fast way to find things in QI macros. Close a few things. So again, lots of different things. Fill in the blank, cut and paste. We have Gauge R&R, design of experiments, little quality function deployment templates. I'm trying to give people ideas about what can be done. And our DOE is not fancy, but if you want to get started learning DOE, which I've never had to do, by the way, the templates are in there. So now let's come back to the statistical tools, and I'll try and wrap that piece up for you. So again, we're going to come into QI macros help. And down here we have some statistical data. And this is bursting strength of paper bags for like a, grocery store or something. And hardwood concentration, is that changing everything? And so all you have to do, select that data with your mouse. And again, if you knew what you were doing, you'd probably do descriptive statistics to see if the data was normal. You'd come in here and do an ANOVA single factor. You might come in here and do a Levene's test for variance, and try and figure out what to do with this. But the stat wizard will look at that and try and figure out what are the best choices for you. And so it'll bash along, do descriptive statistics, ANOVAs. Because those are all integers, it'll try and do chi-square as well. So it'll come back and say the data is normal, the variance is the same, but the means are different. All right, so it's going to try and, instead of saying, gee, the null hypothesis, reject the null hypothesis, it'll just, yeah, the means are different. And so it'll actually give you a box and whisker plot of what that looks like as well. But it did descriptive statistics to figure out the Anderson-Darling statistic. It did a Levene's test, which is what you use for more than 2 columns, and figured out that no, the variances are all the same. And because it was all integers, it'll do a chi-square test. And somebody asked about chi-square tests before, but it'll take all of that and say, well, it's integers, it might be a chi-square test. I guess, if you got integers, it's usually something like that. But if you do have chi-square data, these might be different kinds of things. If you select that data with your mouse, come in, the stat wizard, I don't know if it'll probably do that, but you could come in and say, my brain's going blank at the moment. Sorry. Chi-square's in here somewhere. Ah, there it is. See, that's how often I use that. And it'll tell you that the variables are independent because our p-value is not high. So all of those things can be done right in the QI macros, and they live over here under statistical tools. If you really want to get into some non-normal statistics, we have some templates to do that. Honest to gosh, Dr. Donald Wheeler says that, hey, you don't need to worry about normality for control charts and a lot of other things because control charts will handle non-normal data. And so I tend not to get into that area myself, but you may have data that needs that help as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about our gizmos here. Let's go over somewhere over here. So here's some regression testing data. Again, you can come down and use regression, and the Y values are in the last column. And so it'll calculate that and draw all the charts for you and figure out what's all of the... so our p-value is, yes, there's something going on here. So it's going to show those for you. So if you do a lot of regression analysis, that's built in there as well. Somebody asked, when importing data, is there a number of column data that are preferable to run a test, or can I have as many columns as needed? Yeah, so the idea behind the stat wizard is that yes, you can have lots of columns in there, and it'll just bash through, and if you have 4 columns, it'll do 4 columns. If you have here's one that has 10 columns, right? So it'll you give it, and we'll attempt to chew it up. All right. So usually people don't have a gazillion samples, right? So just some thoughts there for you. All right. So we're coming toward the end of the whole process here. So I think I want you to have this idea. You don't have to be a statistician or a geek to use QI macros. Now, why is that? Because our chart wizards and the chart wizard will take your data and say, what can I do with that data? Right? So people used to ask me, Jay, what do I do with my data? And I'd say, well, did you run the chart wizard? And they'd say, well, no. And I'd say, well, let's do that, right? So if you select data again with your mouse, and you come over here and click on the chart wizard will attempt to figure out what to do with that. And it'll think its way through, and it's going to do a box and whisker plot. It'll do an X bar art, right? So it'll do a box plot and an X bar art chart given that data. That's what it thinks it should do with that. All right? So that's the chart wizard. So these little things help automate how everybody does things. The control chart template wizard, the improvement project wizard, there's a pivot table wizard, right? All of these wizards are helping to automate. It's sort of a form of programmatic artificial intelligence. So I'm taking the stuff we used to teach in class and trying to build it into software so that people don't have to learn it. They can just start doing things. Later on, you can get smart and go learn how to choose the right chart, right? But I will tell you, I've trained enough people to know they don't like decision trees. It's really sad, but true. So I think anybody, even a no-belt, can learn how to use QI macros. Rick Henton said, I don't dread crunching numbers anymore because I know how easy it will be. And the presentation is worthy of forwarding to my customer. Customers are all important, right? And frontline workers can use this too. We have manufacturing companies that have an Excel, they have a PC next to the thing, and they're actually using Excel as the tool to collect data, and they have little calipers that are digitally connected to the computer, and every time they click the button, it'll collect the metric and drop it into one of our templates. So these things can be done. If you're doing big stuff, I'd say go up a scale and go to somebody more exotic than us, but right? And I don't want you to have to spend a fortune to get these tools, right? So for $299, super affordable, and you can do it with, dozens and dozens of people in your organization, maybe hundreds. We have people that do thousands, so right, so, but it makes life easy, and there are quantity discounts. And James Harrington of the Harrington Institute uses QI macros for his green belt, black belt, and master belt, black belt classes because it's very affordable. And for most people, it's everything you will ever need in a toolkit. And you can train anyone in minutes using our online training at qimacros.com. Let me see if I can get to our... So again, if you come into our website under free training, you'll find this. There's a form of this webinar out there. So you can actually go watch this online. We are recording this. You will get a link so that you can watch this again tomorrow if you want to, or share it with anybody else who needs to see it. We have QI Macros video tutorials. I have a weekly insight blog that's like a 3-minute video about improvement tools. We have free white belt training, yellow belt training. There's some free green belt training. Although I don't certify anybody in green belt, black belt, or anything. I let somebody else do that. But anyway, under free QI Macros videos, we have all kinds of things. So if you want to watch a video about how to do the control chart wizard, it's in here. Improvement project wizard, it's in here. Pivot table wizard, any of those things, wizard. All right. We also have a free yellow belt training. And again, that's under here, or white belt training. And it'll take you through the process. And if you want to get certified, we have a test, and we charge $95 to process that. But you'll see there's videos in each one of these. And I'm doing agile process innovation, which is my way of, jump-starting your results with Lean and Six Sigma. And there's always dojo exercises in each one of these so that you actually practice what we're teaching in here. So that's the QI Macros yellow belt training. Right? So lots of free training in here. More free resources over here. Maybe you would need help with figuring out how to put your data together. Well, we have things about the mistakes people make on Excel spreadsheets and so on. All right, so super easy to train. I want you to let everybody know they can go straight to our website 24/7, 365 and learn how to do this, right? Patient safety manager said I had a person go to a green belt class, came back, couldn't create a Pareto chart. And I showed him how to do it in QI macros in like 5 seconds. Tough stuff. So anyway, will you have the tools to make improvement easy, effortless, successful? I think you do if you grab the QI macros. So let's start reducing delay, defects, and deviation. I call those the 3 silent killers of productivity and profitability. And in healthcare, that'll also help prevent patient harm. In healthcare, they're chasing a goal called zero harm, is to get to 0 mistakes, errors, patient harm of any kind. And some hospitals are making pretty good progress on some of those things. And Stephen Lavau said, I've analyzed lots of software. None is as easy to use as QI macros. So we talked about all the parts, the charts, the wizards, the fill-in-the-blank templates, the stat tools, the improvement project data. And that's a lot of, high-speed intro. We have a few minutes left. Again, if you want to reach out to our support group with any questions, especially like the PhD student had a question, and then Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt training right here, lssyb.com. Clients and testimonials, improvement insight videos, lots of things to help you be successful in process improvement, Six Sigma, operational excellence, whatever the heck you call it, because it has so many names now. Any other questions I can answer for anyone? Anything I can demonstrate that you want to see again, or something else you want to see? Yes, do we have someone on staff that can help build our data to go through it? No. You have to get your data together And then you have to have the data usually in columns is best. So date and then some number or 2 numbers or 5 numbers or whatever is the best way to go through that. And again, in the QI macros, let me see if I get the right place. There we go. If you go into our sample data and go in here, you'll see that we have things for healthcare and different kinds of charts and so on and so forth. And so if you want to know what your data looks like, should look like, well, gee, let's go in here and see if there's something in an example that I can use. And that way, right, you'll be in a position to go, oh, it should look like how many samples by column? How many samples by column, right? And somebody asked if you can upgrade from 2019. Yes, you can. If you go to qimacros.com/upgrade, it'll take you into the correct location. Lisa said this was excellent. Thank you so much. My pleasure, Lisa. And again, this will be coming out to you in the next day or so, the edited version of this. Christopher says, awesome. Darren says, is there a way, once we have the data in the wizardry, then is there a way for somebody to help us? We actually have, we actually provide a data analysis service to help you with that. So you can go out to our website under the shortcuts to results and find out more about that, Darren. So yes, we can help you with that. Usually people find once they get it done, they go, oh, I think I know what to do. So, but we'd be happy to do that and help you think about that. So. Other questions I can answer. All right, well, we're coming to the end, and I will invite you to, again, reach out to support@qimacros.com or, and we can help you get started. I'm more concerned with achieving impact in the world, right? I want us to have a hassle-free America, hassle-free healthcare, where there are no mistakes and errors and defects and whatever. I want to get out of that business, right? For the last 3 weeks, we've been fighting Comcast internet issues. Guess what? I don't like that at all, right? I want to get out of that, right? So let's achieve hassle-free healthcare, hassle-free America. Streamline everything that you do, optimize, and improve. It's all easy, but you have to spend a little time and energy looking at your data to make that happen. All right, well, thank you all, and I will let you get on with your day, and I will wrap this up. Cheers.